one of the things that made a lot of our master musicians, a lot of our favorite musicians so great was that they were hearing themselves back in the studio all the time. Especially someone like Hank Jones, most recorded pianist of all time.
Right.
He's regarded as having the best touch of all time. And that's probably because he's done the most recording sessions, listened back to himself in the booth, feeling these things.
Yep.
Even if he's not consciously analyzing it, he's hearing it back, and you're tweaking yourself every time you're listening to yourself back to play back. And so it's something that can be painful to listen to yourself and to analyze it, but it's part of the music.
Absolutely.
And everyone has to go through that.
So
turn
for
on the
these,
recorder.
having done so many Emmett's Place and other gigs, but specifically these where you're in the same piano, same situation, somewhat of a consistent rhythm section, different guests and stuff. But like, how much listening did you do or are you doing of these recordings in particular, and how much of your how has that affected your development?
Well, it's funny because I try not to listen to too much of myself when I could be listening to other people, and there's a limit of how much you can take. But in realistic terms, we're making YouTube content. We're trying to figure out which tunes are the best.
And maybe that's like the equivalent of Hank Jones in the studio. It's like now you're putting together a YouTube video, you end up listening to yourself.
Yeah, it's just updated. Especially in the beginning, we would listen for audio quality.
Right.
Like, how does the stream sound? How does it look? And so you'd be watching it and hearing it back. Right. I would notice things like how tense I would be sometimes. And I would tell myself just to relax. That's an asset of having video content of yourself.
Absolutely.
You can see how you're sitting, how your posture is.
Yeah.
And realize when I'm really tensing up.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can get a different sound when you're tense. But generally, you want to try to be relaxed.
Absolutely.
No matter what you're doing in your life. So it's not only those musical things, but it's also the physical aspect of how you're relating to the piano as well.
Right.
Should we keep going?
Yeah.
A flat.
Region thoroughfare there, right?
A little
different key. Yeah.
That's a great point. I mean, quoting is something that's so valuable in the music, and everyone has an opinion on how much you should quote.
Right.
Other music. Some people think you should come up with only original things.
Right.
Some people comprise their solos of almost all quotes.
Right.
And they string them together in this way, and it shows a lot of personality.
Absolutely.
You pointed out right away, Parisian Thoroughfare, Bud Powell.
Yeah.
How could you go wrong nodding to
Yeah.
one of the creators of
But I think the way that you did it here, because we're chopping it up, we're listening, we're analyzing it at a real, kind of meta level.
Yeah.
But I think if I just hear that in line with the solo, it's like a subconscious thing. It's just like a little shadow of something cool. And so I think this kind of quoting is more of like, it's like a vernacular, right? You know what I mean? It's like, it's a language that we speak, and if you catch it or not, it doesn't really matter because it's part of your personality, part of your influences. And I think you look at the lineage of the music, this is a big part of what the music is.
Yeah.
It's like it's not a matter of, I'm sure in the YouTube comments, we get plenty of opinions like, why'd you do this? Why'd you not do that? But I think the exciting thing is when musicians are in the moment, which you can clearly see you guys are here, and just like, what do I want to create? Not like, how much am I going to quote or not, but what does the moment require?
Yeah. I mean, all that stuff is in post-game analysis.
Exactly,
right?
exactly.
We had a little Bud Powell moment there. Russell sliding around. Okay, that's an interesting moment too.
Yeah.
That's a very common thing to do, is like play a phrase and then leave it open for a response. So this is like this kind of phrasing is just textbook call and response.
Right.
1, 2, 3, 4. Response. I'm almost trading twos.
Right. A little extended call and response.
Yeah. So I'm like leaving it open, and it's funny that like while I'm doing something so concrete, Russell decides to do something so concrete too, which is this kind of.
which is like a bass line quote.
Yeah,
as well,
yeah.
Like you knew what you were gonna play.
and then we broke out of it at the same time.
Yeah, that's cool.
And so then I go continuing with the triad theme that I had hinted at before.
Right.
So I just see this time instead of half steps, I'm going whole steps. Let's roll it back in context. Textbook blues scale.
Yeah.
Whole steps. Okay, so this is
down again.
This is the first time that I played over the bar line, really, and not delineated. Here's the top of the blues form.
Right.
And so that means that things are getting a little more complex, and I want to build a little more tension.
Yeah.
Rather than just okay, we're going to start over on the top of the course.
Right.
Let's see where we go from here. So I'm playing over the bar line here. It's the top of the course. Top, right? So I'm doing a little more call and response between the hands now.
Yeah.
So this is something we talked about in an earlier lesson where we have a lot of choices on what to do between the right hand and the left hand.
Yeah.
So I'm answering my right hand with the left hand here, which kind of locks in a groove. Bar line. So simple.
Yeah.
Just simple call and response
Simple
between
but
the hands
effective.
to lock it in. So that's Wynton Kelly.
Right.
A nod to Wynton Kelly,
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I do it twice.
Yeah.
And I tend to do a lot of things more than once.
Yeah.
To give people a chance to lock in.
Faith comes by hearing.
Right? To give the
The
listener
good book told you that.
to give the listener a chance to have something to grasp onto.
Yeah. You use some really interesting ways in terms of repeating, though. It's like what changes? Like it's like little subtle things, like maybe the register, where you're starting, like the same rhythm but starting on a different beat. Those kind of things. Again, lots of choices.
Yeah.
And it's like if we don't explore those choices, we'll miss out on them.
I think I played it over the one chord, and then I actually just modulated up and forth to play it over the four chord there.
Right.
And then Evan caught that, because that's a landing point, a resolution point, and so he came in and he caught onto that.
Yeah. Is that you kind of acknowledging to him that he caught it there?
Yeah. Okay, so I think I looked at him and just to check in,
Right.
It's weird playing this kind of setup where you're not looking at the musicians.
Right.
You
They're
know,
looking at you.
Yeah, they're looking at me,
Like
but
they can see your hands, they can see your body movements and everything.
yeah, exactly. But
Very
a lot
Oscar
of
Peterson trio.
a lot of times we talk with our eyes, especially in the classic piano trio format. So just to look, it's something that's super underrated is just checking in, looking into the eyes of the people you're playing with, because playing jazz is fairly intimate.
Right.
You you look into the eyes and you can see what someone's feeling, like actually feeling.
Right.
Through their eyes. Evan smiling is encouraging for me.
Right.
And I think we decide that we're going to just take it up into the next gear. And so we're actually, maybe the tempo and the intensity is just creeping up slightly. And you hear that with Russell too. He's playing actually upbeats, which is very hard to do at this tempo. So he's feeling that too.
Yeah.
And he plays those upbeats.
Is he going there before you did, or was that you were kind of reacting to him?
I think we just decided we're going to collectively take this energy to the next place, and that was his way of propelling it forward.
Right.
I think that the hi-hat may get louder too at this time, which is something that Art Blakey will do,
right?
Among others. To really kind of elevate the intensity.
Yep.
And as a piano player, to know these devices for the other instruments.
Yeah.
Again, you can go back and talk when you start playing with other musicians. You can say, hey, when I get to this point in my solo, try this, make the hi-hat a little more intense. Those are things that can hook it up for a piano player.
Absolutely.
And so knowing the roles of the instruments are important. Here comes Russell. There's one four chord. Playing over the bar line again. So, I mean, that part.
Yeah.
There's no textbook for that. I'm just kind of creating a fantasy now. All the stuff we know about harmony and all that stuff, it's all out the window. I'm kind of it's a textural at this point.
Yeah.
I got something going in my right hand, and I'm just kind of trying to create energy more than harmony or more than rhythm. There's very little rhythm going on there,
right?
Except for I'm doing some upbeat things in the left hand, but I'm thinking about how can I build the energy of this solo.
Right. Yeah, and you can feel there's sort of a collective, even as you leave some of the overt, like right in the swing, but there's a collective willingness to keep that form going, and almost like a trust, not only within the trio, but with the listener too. It's like, okay, it's getting kind of, but there's going to be a payoff at some point.
Yeah.
And then, kind of like, what are the decisions in terms of when that's going to be and how it's going to come out.
And so Evan starts to play a little more freely on the drums, and he has some liberties. Russell's holding it down.
Russell definitely, yeah.
He's super focused on like, okay, I'm going to make sure I'm right there.
Yep.
Because if everyone's up, kind of creating textures, could get a little wonky.
Right.
So someone's got to stay home.
Yeah.
Break it out with some chords. Evan marks the form, I don't.
Great stuff.
Okay, so the last little bit of this solo, after the fantasy, I break it out into some kind of rhythmic stuff, and that's basically the climax.
Yeah.
Because every solo should aim to tell a story and have some sort of a direction.
Yeah.
Or not. Some are more steady, and that's kind of the conceptual basis of it. But here we're going for like for a certain kind of arc, build, hit that climax, and then out real quick.
When I think that, like, thinking back to the very beginning of the solo, with the chordal stuff, with the 2-5-1s descending, because bass and drums, piano, but especially rhythm section, the intensity really didn't pull back at the beginning. So it's like wherever it's going to go, it's really going to like that decision in a way was already made at the beginning, even though you didn't know it. You know what I mean? And sometimes I think great things come together when there is a little bit of restriction because you're soloing after others. You're part of a bigger thing. And I think it's a lot of times especially if it's pianists or bass player who are soloing at the end, a lot of times we feel like we have to reinvent and set everything up. It's like, no, the job's been done for you as far as the form. All you got to do is just keep your ears open and be humble to the music and kind of do what the music needs. It's not about like, why do I have to go to this? It's like, because that's where it's going, you know.
And this specific cut of the solo is it looks like it's like just under 2 minutes and 30 seconds. So because we started at that higher intensity, I think it's a shorter solo, which is also important to kind of denote. Is like, you know, the solo didn't need to start all the way down here,
right?
And it's already started here, so maybe I didn't need to play the normal 5-6 minute solo that I normally would do in this kind of setting. We just got in and we got it out really quick, and I think it's pretty effective because of that.
Yes, that's a great point too, and it's like we have to know, is this a let me get in, get to it, and move on situation, or is this a let me build up? Like, what does the moment require? Because we're going to need to be able to do both and everything in between.
Yeah.
But like a certain amount of listening to what's happening on a bigger scale is just as important as being able to nail all these, you know, slick substitutions and stuff.
And experience is one thing that can help you determine that.
Yeah.
And, you know, everyone's been in a situation where they played too long.
Right.
And everyone's looking at them like, you know, or you thought you played something really cool, really killing. You listen back and you're like, damn, I played way too long.
Right.
You know, I was interested for the first 2 minutes and 30 seconds, but after that,
right,
you know, I had nothing left. And so sometimes it's cool to leave listeners and the band wanting a little bit more, or just come in with that quick solo or quick taste. You know,
do we ever listen back to something like this and be like, man, I wish I'd played 8 more choruses?
I guess
Why
not.
did I get it? That's pretty rare.
Yeah, you know,
I wish I'd played more notes.
One thing cool about New York when I was growing up is Roy Hargrove, someone you worked with a lot. He would come to the sessions at Smalls, and he would go and he would sit in and he would take one course. Ooh. And he would say everything he had to say in one course and like leave everyone else that was, you know, up there taking 5, 6, 7, 8 courses at 2 o'clock in the morning, you know, pondering, you know, why they couldn't get to any of the depth that he was getting in one course.
Yeah.
And that's just an experience that I had where I saw it and felt it in real time. You know, a master just taking one course and just saying everything they needed to say on a tune. And I always have that in the back of my mind. You know, you don't need that much time to tell your story.
Right.
You know, if you're doing it effectively.
Right. Facts.
So the last little bit of this that I think is important is I'll leave with one of the most famous jazz idiom quotes, which I love. I love the famous jazz idiom quotes.
Yeah,
and this is one that was like a key component of the Miles Band in the 50s and in the 60s, and they did it in different ways.
Yep.
So Miles would say on a blues, and that's one of the most kind of common language-based rhythmic ideas that just tells everyone where they are.
Yeah.
And kind of going to the 4 chord on the drum on the blues, it could set up a drum fill, it could set up a drum solo. You know, it can be used in so many different ways.
Yeah.
You say ba ba doo ba dee dee da da spee ba ba doo ba doo, and we did that unknowingly in another video with Patrick Bartley, and there were a lot of comments about how do we know how to do it all at the same time, and it's those things like that can really hook up a band.
Yeah.
And honor the past. Honor Miles and everything, and then kind of aim to push it forward a bit.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And so, you know, I think I was looking for a way. We had built it up. How do I get out of this thing? You know, I had already been playing some language like, which is another common rhythmic idea for especially for the top of the chorus.
Yeah.
You know, they play all this kind of stuff, and then 1, 2, 3, 4. Which is something they'd use to clear at the top of the chorus. So I'm playing that rhythm over and over and over again, which is already a Miles thing.
Well, I was just thinking too with the, you know, talking about clearing at the top, just to jump back, the chorus before where Evan hit it on 1 and you were still syncopating around that. You didn't hit on one. Like that was an important thing that kind of connects now to clearing things out. And I think like so many exciting moments can happen when we don't hit all together.
Yeah.
We will at some point, but I see a lot of it, especially lesser experienced players, younger players, or whatever, just lesser experienced. They get caught up in their head with like, oh, I should have played it with him.
Yeah.
But like you look at the really great players, and we can all step into this space whenever we want. And I remember when I kind of started thinking, oh, it's cool. Whatever happens is actually cool. Like you hear older musicians talk about, oh, just relax with it. And I'm like, no, that's sloppy. But I mean, being in the moment, playing with other people, not only do you not need to resolve everything together, it's more exciting when you don't, because the way you guys played, you continued on with your thought. You didn't try to correct it or hook up with him. Yeah. So like he had his resolution, you had yours around it, and then the cycle keeps going. And it actually, I think, is better for the music. So I would just encourage everybody, as you're like analyzing this or Oscar Peterson trio, anything that you like what's going on, is like look for those moments. Just don't look for just when everything comes together. You're gonna find those too. But how do great players navigate when things are slipping and sliding? That form is still going, the swing is still going, the blues is still going. But it's like those moments I think are super important to learn how to do.
Yeah. So beep-a-dee-dee.
Yeah.
I keep playing that rhythm, which is like a Miles kind of thing. Here it goes. Playing it. Play it 5 times. And I'm going to the other Miles now. And anything could happen from there.
Right, could be a drum solo,
yeah.
It could be trading.
Right, and then Russell is the one that kind of picks it back up. Mm-hmm. Russell comes in first.
Ah, yeah. Comes in on 2, right?
Yeah, so he picks it up, and then I end the solo. We'll transcribe that out here.
Yeah. Try it on
Yeah.
top. You're playing the roots on it too, I think, right?
Yeah.
Maybe.
I'm playing it over. Yeah, I'm playing it over the 5. And I'm bouncing back and forth. Something like that.
Yep.
In the moment, some of those notes can be a little different, especially at this tempo.
Yep.
But that's kind of a cool flat 9 shape.
I always think about that as, the second inversion triad and the tritone interval on the bottom. It's got great balance in that voice.
Yeah, and instead of chromatic, and I think you can resolve them in a number of different ways.
Yep.
But could have been from D flat to B flat or something. But once you put it over the pedal,
right, it becomes a thing. When I think too at this tempo, because a lot of folks will be like, oh, how can you play so much 5 or roots over that? But as Russell's he's not just sitting on that.
Yeah.
And when he hears that, he's like, oh, I can walk around that. But also because with the tempos going by, we can get it, because a lot of times we get too stuck in the middle without we can go. I mean, I know the maestro Ron Carter says we're not supposed to go below a certain point. But
even with see the S on the Steinway?
Exactly.
All that belongs to me.
Exactly. But if we sneak it in like that at this tempo, I think it can be super effective.
Yeah. And one of the things in some of the earlier lessons was to encourage people to use all of the piano. Because so often I hear people play and they don't honor that top octave.
Yeah.
They don't honor that bottom octave.
That's right.
Piano's quite expansive, and the colors should be used.
And a lot of times folks are like, oh yeah, they are thinking like that when it's solo piano.
Yeah.
But then they get to trio and they're all of a sudden, and this is actually a crowded area because the bass might want to go up there, and like the cymbals and the snare and stuff is really all there. We've got all this to play with.
But the key is clarity. You know, if you can be clear about what you're doing, then it gives space to everyone else to be clear about what they're doing.
Yeah.
And the more you do it, the more you play, the more experience you have with it, the more you talk about it,
Yeah.
the more you play with the same people over and over again, where you can develop something in a little bit of a conceptual way of playing based on the masters, but then doing your own thing with it.
Absolutely.
And it's a lifelong journey and a lifelong study.
Yeah.
But
Can you show that break again? Because there's something cool I wanted to. Yeah. So right before that, go back just a little bit. When you come out of the mild trumpet, like you physically raise up your hands, and like it's almost like a signal to be like, I don't know what's gonna happen. We can go some different places, but I think that's a kind of cool visual cue. You know, because it's like we don't have like the trumpet or the saxophone.
Yeah.
When they're done with their solo, they can put it down horn and walk off, and we know what they're doing. For us, sometimes like, you know, or bass, like we're continually playing, but we do have this ability. First of all, we don't have to play all the time.
Yeah.
So it's it's a good reminder that we can do that.
for me, sometimes lifting my hands off the piano forces me to take some space because it's so far away that I can't come back down and play right away.
Right.
And it's actually a reminder to myself to take my hands off,
Right.
to just give some space for a second.
Yeah.
You know, in that way where a trumpet player can put the horn down for a sec and then bring the horn back to their lips. And there's a certain sense of drama in that too.
Yep.
And lastly, I think that as jazz musicians, we need to strive to surprise ourselves.
Yeah.
A little bit more than we do.
Yeah.
We don't always want to know what's coming, and to truly surprise those around you, you have to feel surprised yourself.
Yep.
And that's one of the beauties of playing this music, is trying to figure out how can I surprise and come up with something new.
Yeah.
By surprising yourself, you know, that's a good way to not really know yourself even what's going to come next.
Absolutely.
Which keeps it exciting.
Absolutely. Well, this is good, man. I'm glad we got to break these choruses. I mean, we spent more time on these choruses, but it really is fun to get the details, and I know folks are going to get a lot out of this in terms of like how to apply not only these specific ways that you went about with this very concise, as you said, I mean, it's less than 2.5 minutes, so like this is a concise solo, but you got a lot of notes in there. I mean, and it's moving at a tempo where if we can learn how to keep up through some of these practice techniques, you can tell a really interesting story within a shorter amount of time. That's the advantage of playing at tempo.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, this would be like two A sections on a ballad, body and soul or something, or not even at a slow ballad tempo. So we've got all this space. Like, what are we gonna do with it?
Yeah, and how to feel the faster tempo as a slower, bigger beat as well. You know, a lot of times, like, it helps to, you know, we're at this tempo, 1, 2, 3. These are each bars. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Course is almost over.
Right.
11, 12. Bam. Right. So.
Yep.
So to feel the bigger tempo and the bigger beat too, and not concentrate on every little eighth note and little quarter note when playing at the speed is something that can really help. You know, tapping your foot once a bar at this tempo, or reminding yourself to think of the bigger picture, and then be relaxed in the lines and everything that you go for.